Hi, everybody. My name is Joel Pitney. I'm the host of If I'm Being Honest, straight talk about book publishing and promotion. I'm also the founder of Launch My Book, and I am very excited to be speaking today with Dave Sheets. Dave, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Dave and I met at the I forget the
Writer
name of the
MBA.
conference,
Yeah,
Writer
Writer
MBA
MBA.
conference in New
Yeah,
Orleans, which was
yeah.
we had a really good time because it was New Orleans. Um, and we struck up a bit of a friendship and learned a lot about Dave. He's been in the book industry for 30 years and has a company called Indie Author Book Services. He's worked in all dimensions of the industry on the traditional side, traditional publishing side, self-publishing side, and his company really specializes in book distribution and book printing. Which is a very exciting topic, even though it might not sound that way to people outside of this little world. I definitely love it. And so I really wanted to talk to Dave today about, um, kind of what he's seen as in the shifting industry as we've kind of moved, as the industry keeps changing, different models that are popping up. And particularly, I really want to talk a lot about the value in direct sales and bulk printing, which is kind of the specialty, the sweet spot of his business. So, Dave, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add about yourself or your company or anything.
No, that's great. I mean, we do a lot of work with a lot of authors on the print side of things, and so I'm happy to share what bit of experience I've got with everyone.
Awesome. Well, so I'm just going to dive in. I got some questions, and I kind of want to go straight to the issue with you, which is, self-publishing's really exploded. I think in the
Mhm.
last 5 years in particular, but it's been moving that direction over the last 10. And part of the reason for that is the evolution of print-on-demand technology. It's
Yeah.
very easy now for anybody to, do put some files up through an Amazon KDP or Ingram Spark account and have a book that's available for anyone anywhere in the world to buy.
Yeah.
And so one question I'm curious about is in that environment, if you've chosen to go the self-publishing route, what is the value of offset printing? Why why do it still? And by
Yeah, that's
offset
great.
printing, we're talking about large batches of books that are printed at one time in the way
Yeah.
that traditional publishing does.
Yeah, let me maybe define a few things first. Number one is print on demand is what everybody talks about, and that's the digital printing. But print on demand truly is one book at a time. Uh, the next category is what we call short run printing, and that's still using the exact same equipment, digital equipment, as print on demand. So it's instead of printing one, you might be printing 5, 10, 50, 100, but it's the same equipment. What we call offset printing or long run printing tends to be everything over 500 units. And the reason why offset can be really, really important to an author is number one, you get better pricing. So as typically as your unit quantity goes up, your cost comes down per unit, and that's a really good thing because you have more margin available to you as an author for every book sale that you make. The second thing is that with offset printing, your quality goes up. So for any of the listeners out there who have printed a book with some of the big box, what I'll call the big box print on demand services, it's hit and miss in terms of quality. Sometimes the quality can be really, really high, and a book comes in. Sometimes that quality is a little bit suspect because they're having to farm out that printing to other people who may or may not be doing a great job with it. So I don't know if that's been your experience. I've certainly seen it. I hear that from a lot of clients who come in and want to work with us, even on the short run print side, because our quality's higher. So offset is really important because of the margin, typically because of the quality, and there's nothing wrong with print on demand. It's a great place to start. Every author is going to start there, but there are other options.
So when you're talking about quality, because one thing I'll often tell people, especially if they have a very simple book, a novel,
Hmm.
it doesn't have a lot of graphical elements on the inside, no, no photos, no color. What I'll often tell people is that the biggest factor in the quality of your book is going to be the design, right? You want it to be designed well, and then the printing costs, the printing is a little bit different, right? Is less important. Where do you, I mean, first of all, I guess, would you agree with that statement? And second of all, with where do you see the quality differences specifically within the book?
Yeah. Well, a couple things. I agree that design is number one, but print quality is pretty close behind that. Because if somebody
Okay.
picks up a book and they like the design, they pick it up, and the pages fall out, you've got a bad experience. I mean,
Hmm.
so there's an issue. The other thing is you may have two of the same book sitting on the shelf, and what I'm talking about quality is the quality of the reproduction of that. So you may have one that it has a whole different shade of red than the other, and it's the exact same book. And people will look at that and go, "Wow, where did these come from?" And so there's quality in the color, there's quality in the paper. I've seen books that fall apart because they're not bound correctly. I've seen books where you've had signatures or groups of pages that are bound upside down. I mean, all sorts of things where, if you don't have that sort of quality control at the front end, that becomes an issue. And a lot of these meat grinder type print on demand organizations, they don't have that same quality control that you would like to see.
That's no, that's interesting, and it reminds me of one of my pet peeves, uh, in when it comes to the quality, is on the spine of the book. This is
Yes.
when I always show people
Yeah.
this right here. There's a 32nd of an inch variation, and so if the way you've designed your book has this solid spine and then a different color on
Yeah.
the front cover, every single batch of a print on demand book could be printed with this line, falling. It's not always going to fall right on the crease.
Yeah, and that's an example of where the designer of that particular book could have been more friendly to his client.
Right.
If you can produce books that don't have those sorts of hard edges, then the manufacturing process, which is going to have some role,
Yep.
you're going to have issues throughout that process.
No, that's cool. So that's great, Dave. And one thing you're an author, you work with lots of clients, different people, and my guess is you're probably in support of this, but you can do your print on demand setup, which might
Mhm.
be easier for online fulfillment, right? Because it just is when you're selling books online, it's pretty easy to use print on demand.
Right.
And then you've got kind of your cache of offset books. How do you how do you see people selling those? What do you
Well,
do with your offset books?
yeah. Well, first of all, print on demand works really well for, let's call it, I mean, Amazon. Amazon is the 800-pound gorilla. They're selling a lot of books, and having inventory go through their system makes the most sense as print on demand. The interesting thing is the quality of the books that they're sending out to clients tends to be a little bit higher than author copies, which is really interesting.
Mm,
I trust what they do from a consumer standpoint. That's their bread and butter. But to your question, what do you do with offset? How does it work? Why would an author want to use offset? Well, number one, if you want to be in this business long term as an author, you want to build a customer base. You want to build a reader base. And if you send everybody that you have through Amazon, you will never know who your reader is. And so what we do and what we talk a lot about with authors is creating that direct to consumer sales channel through your own website or some other, methodology so that you can capture who those readers are. Because let's say, as most authors want to do, they want to publish a second book and a third book and a fourth book. If you start to build that readership and that mailing list, so to speak, you now have something that you can go back to and talk to those people about with your second book, your third book.
mhm.
You can't rely on retail to make that happen for you. So, that's really, really important. Most of the clients that I work with are, speakers, they're coaches, consultants, they're building something else. So the book becomes a really important tool in their toolkit to help them do that, but they're not relying on just the book itself to do it, but they have to have avenues to get that book into people's hands, whether it's at a speaking engagement, or where they're handing it out almost like a business card to people to get them to come back and maybe work with them on the consulting side.
That's
So
great.
those are some really important direct to consumer type of models.
No, that's really interesting. And so, to me, what I'm hearing is kind of two different models. So there's one where you actually build, you have a direct sales base where,
Yep.
someone who's a frequent speaker or presenter or someone who has workshops, that kind of thing, they're going to be direct in person with clients, with potential book buyers. And in that case, it makes sense to have this big stock of books that you can take to your conference or take to your workshop
Yep.
or take to your local book signing kind of thing. And then and then there's the other piece, which is can you build a direct to consumer online sales business where you're selling direct to your website and then fulfilling those orders? That's the one I'm very curious about.
Yeah.
Because what are the pros and from one hand, you could say, well, print on demand still makes that easy, right? Because the fulfillment, the shipping, the e-commerce, all that stuff is just taken care of directly through Amazon. They take their cut. They take 40% of the retail costs, right?
Right. Right.
Um, what have you seen in your experience when people are selling books directly through their website? How do they solve that problem logistically?
Well, it's a challenge. It is. I mean, but this is 2025. I mean, if you're going to be an independent author in 2025, you have to be able to sell online to directly to consumers and capture that consumer data. You have to.
Yep.
It's the lifeblood of who you are as an author. And so I'm a big proponent of crawl, walk, run. The crawl step is you bring in some inventory, you start to sell on your website. Yes, you stuff the books into envelopes and you put, the proverbial stamp on the outside and you send it out. And you do that until you feel like you can't do that anymore. And so that then you go to the walk step, which is now, or that you've hit that tipping point, so to speak, where you now find somebody else that can help you do that. So it could be a third party logistics organization that does pick, pack, and ship. It could be that you bring in somebody who's, working for you 5, 10 hours a week to do that for you. But you have to engage in it and learn the process. It's really important to do that until you hit a point where now you've got to have somebody else do that for you. And the challenge I hear from people is, I don't want to do that. It's just too much work. Well, yeah, it's a lot of work, but that the lifeblood of that list is incredibly important. And to just throw that out means that you're really throwing out future opportunity.
That's great. And I love the crawl, walk, run metaphor because that makes it feel less overwhelming.
Yeah.
I never quite thought of it that way, but I can imagine someone they're launching their debut novel. They've got their book set up on Amazon for print on demand and they're running promotions that way. But they've
Yep.
got a website and they say you can buy it direct from me, support me, maybe even give people a discount. And they
Yep.
could have a stock of 100, 200 books hanging out
Yeah.
in their garage. The
Yep.
volume is not going to be significant up front. No one who's self-publishing starts off with a huge volume of sales, but
Right.
you could be fulfilling those on Saturdays at not too much of a cost, taking payment through the website,
Yep.
and then you start to build that. You've got real customer data in a way you're not going to get through Amazon. And I
Yeah.
want to emphasize that for people who don't realize this. When you sell books through Amazon, you will not get customer data. They control it.
At
You'll
all.
never know who
Yep.
they are. You'll never get their email address unless you figured out another way to send them to your website through the book. So um, that's a really valuable thing that you're talking about.
Yeah, and as an author, you can provide so much, uh, so many different ancillary things to get people to come and buy from you, whether it's free downloads or it's the access to a free audio book or a free ebook, if you buy the paper book, all of those types of things where you can incentivize the reader to come directly to you rather than going to Amazon. And I think, but the important thing is if you don't build that list, you will have no way to market to people when your second book comes out. If you do build the list, you have that built in.
That's awesome. Very cool. So just another question, this is a bit of a pivot, but AI, topic of AI. Everyone's
Yep.
talking about AI. I spent about a year being a Luddite and just pretty ignoring AI myself. And then, my colleague Sadie, uh, had been exploring with Chat GPT because she's a little more innovative than me. And I finally started using it. So like I've
Yeah.
spent the last 4 to 6 months actually using Chat GPT from everything from, helping me write an article to figuring out the best strategy for my fantasy football league, right? Um, and it's, I have my own opinion about it, but I'm curious, where are you seeing AI having impact in book publishing and writing? Where's that? Are you seeing that? What are you seeing?
Yeah, a little bit. I think number one, there are authors. I mean, the elephant in the room is there are authors out there who are trying to write books just via AI and sending them out the door. And there are authors who have done that. I have never heard of an author who's been successful at it though,
Mm,
because AI still is not at a level where it can produce a long form book that's good, that's readable. And so, and there's probably people who want to argue with me on that topic, but it's just not there yet. Will it get there? Maybe. It's really difficult for AI to produce the right sort of feeling and empathy and all of those things. It can spit out facts all day long. But that connection that a true author has with the reader, that's still not there by any stretch. So where we're seeing AI really affecting us is that there are authors who think they can do that, and so they may be bypassing maybe some of the services that we can offer them. But ultimately, they're not going to be successful at that because no, I haven't heard of anybody that is. Second thing is that the tools that AI is creating for authors and publishers and so forth are fantastic. You just mentioned Chat GPT. I mean, we utilize that as a tool to help us. But it's not the end all be all to create the product. So it
mm,
may help us generate ideas. It may help us generate some short form things as we dump in other content that we've already created. And it's helping us reorganize that or rewrite something. That's where it can be really, really good. Spelling, I mean, and punctuation and some of those types of things. I mean, some of the services out there that can do that, like Grammarly, they're fantastic. I mean, they're a great first run to help pick off things that we don't have to look at later. And so from a tool standpoint, it's fantastic. But from a writing standpoint, for writing finished product, it's not there yet.
that's really that's interesting. I mean, that's been my experience as well. It almost feels like AI is a good sort of idea generator.
Hmm.
Whether you're
Yeah,
working
it
on a
can be.
cover, you need to come up with some ideas for how a cover might look, or you need to play around with some subject lines for an email,
Yeah.
or if you're writing a book, I was working with someone the other day because one of the things I do is I'm a ghostwriter, and they were interested in figuring out how the law of attraction uh, translated into principles that were usable in a specific field of retail business.
Okay.
And they threw that in. They said, "Hey, how does the law of attraction, you know, how can I use the law of attraction in my retail business?" Right?
Right.
And it spat out some interesting ideas
Yeah.
that we then took and then added. It was like some skeleton ideas that we could then fill in with flesh and bone and tone and narrative and real stories and everything. And it was very
Right.
useful.
Right.
Um,
I think one of the things what you just said reminded me. One of the things that's been challenging for us is that we will have authors who are independently publishing that need a cover design that will go out and they'll use AI to create a cover design that they like, and then they come in and say, "Would you build this cover design for me?" And we've gotten to the point where we're like, no, we will not copy that. Number one, you used AI to create it, and for us to recreate it is actually way more expensive than it is to create a different cover for you that makes more sense for you because now we're going out and we're having to like almost illustrate things that you've already illustrated, and we can't recreate that with AI even, to what you just did. So it's I think it is making things harder on the design standpoint
yep.
when somebody goes out and has a very specific thing that they've played with and they're asking us to recreate it. And my design team is like, no, we're not doing that. I mean, or if we're going to do that, it's like 3x the cost.
Yep. We
So,
we run into similar issues, and one thing we
yeah,
found, I mean, we've been able to successfully reproduce a few covers that were sent to us, and that actually kind of worked pretty well. But what we've found when it comes to AI cover generation is when the client generates some covers with AI, they get this anchoring bias thing in their head.
yeah,
They
exactly.
they just get really locked in on one idea,
Yeah,
and it makes it very difficult for us to generate new ideas, which are usually better, because a good cover designer is going to outperform
absolutely.
AI every day of the week. But they get so
Absolutely.
locked into the idea that they were able to generate so quickly with Chat GPT that they can't see these new ideas with an open mind, and it's a
Right.
cognitive bias issue. Um,
You're exactly right. I mean, and it creates real issues because our design teams, your design teams are, I mean, they're professionally know what works. They know where things need to be. There's a science to it. There's an art to it as well, but there's a science. I mean, there's certain things you have to do if you're going
yeah,
to attract somebody to pick that book up. And just because it looks nice doesn't mean that it's going to be effective.
yeah. No, that's interesting. Well, it's a brave new world. It's interesting
Yeah.
to kind of keep our eye on it.
Yeah.
Um, so I kind of want, big picture, taking a bit of a step back here because one of the themes of this show is being honest, right? Being straight
Yeah.
talk.
Yeah.
And as you know, there's a lot of myths in the book industry. I confront them every day. I talk to clients on the phone, potential clients on the phone every day, and almost everybody has heard something from somewhere or from someone about something that they should be doing when it comes to book publishing or promotion. And I find that a lot of it is misleading or straight up false. So what's one of the biggest myths that you encounter or have encountered recently in the book world?
There's a couple. Number one, the big one is for new authors coming in who have this grand vision of being traditionally published. That the myth is that the traditional publisher is always going to be more successful than an indie independent author. And I categorically say that's false. Can a traditionally published author have more success? Yes, maybe. Can an indie author have just as much success? Absolutely. I've seen it. And so that's a huge myth. And so to throw out the options of independently publishing just because, and I actually use this terminology in the industry, we hear of things called vanity press.
Yeah, yeah.
Vanity press is somebody, that you're going and you're paying lots of money for and all of these things, and then we get you probably get accused of that. I get accused of that sometimes of being a vanity press. But I think the true definition of vanity presses are where you hold out to have Simon and Schuster's name or HarperCollins' name on the spine of your book, and the only reason that you want it there is because that's the name when in fact you could have more success as an indie author. So that's the first thing. And I'm not calling out those two publishers, by the way, that they're great publishers, but I think for the concept that the author is holding out for that is true vanity. I mean,
Yeah,
that's the definition of it right there.
yeah.
So the second thing is that I see in the industry is where authors come in and say, traditional retail is the holy grail. If I don't get that, I'm not successful. And I would categorically say that's false as well. You work with a lot of people who are industry leaders or speakers or coaches and consultants. We just mentioned that a few minutes ago, who have a core business and they're producing a book to be a part of that or a tool in their toolkit. It doesn't come down to numbers anymore. I mean, the success metric is not necessarily how many books have you sold.
Mm,
The success metric comes by do you fully understand your target audience, number one, and do you have very specific goals for your book, number two. And if your goal for your book is I don't care how many I sell, but I'm trying to land 3 6-figure clients next year,
hmm
and you do, then your book is a wild success. And
hmm
I have seen art, I have one client in particular who's probably sold 500 books. And if you look at the number, you're like, well, that's not a success. But he landed three six-figure clients in the first year after the book came out, and that was his success metric. And so we call that a huge success. And so it just comes down to making sure you understand what your goals are. Traditional retail is very difficult. You have to work through distributors. You typically have to have some sort of sales mechanism to make sure that the retailers know where your book is coming from or what it is, that it's even available. And then they're going to trickle in here, there, and everywhere. There's a ton of effort that has to go into that side of the industry for really little gain, to be honest with you. And we can talk about some of the special markets opportunities and other direct sales type things, later. But the retail side of things is not the holy grail. So that's the second thing. And I had a third thing too. It was really, hey, as an author, my book is going to allow me to quit my full-time job and write full-time. A huge myth. It doesn't happen that way. It can happen that way, but it doesn't happen that way very often.
Hmm.
So my encouragement is write, keep writing, keep publishing, and then at some point in time, you're going to get this critical mass of content that may allow you to do that. But it's probably going to be, you're going to have 10, 15, 20 books before you get to that level.
Now, I'm so glad you said that. I'm so glad you said that. That's one of my favorite myths. That last one, is that if somehow I'm not making money on these books, A, to like make my money back on all the money I put in, and
Sure.
B, making so much profit that I can quit my day job, right? And I'm measuring the success through royalties,
Yeah.
then no one will make it. I mean, even traditional publishers, I think the latest stat I heard was 20% of authors make their advance back when they're getting an advance against royalties.
And it may
Um,
even be lower than that.
right,
Yeah.
exactly, because who knows how honest those numbers are, right? So it takes many books. I mean, you're talking 10 or 15. That's a big deal, and so I always want to let people know, hey, look, if you're not in this for the long haul,
Yeah.
then you need to figure out another way to determine the success of this book, right?
Yeah. Like going back to, hey, this book is going to generate additional business for me, or it's
Yep.
going to help sell my services, or, that's where, or speak, hey, if this book allows me to get on bigger and bigger stages where I'm getting, two, three, four, $5,000 a speaking gig, that now needs to go against your ROI on your book.
Yeah.
And it's super important that an author looks at it from that perspective.
That's right. Particularly in the nonfiction space, right? I mean, there's
Yeah.
so much value to having a book beyond the sales, right? There's prestige. It builds your authority as a speaker or a consultant or a thought leader to have a book.
Yeah.
It's a place. I always find this really interesting because I do a lot of nonfiction ghostwriting, and a lot of the people I'm working with, this is the first place where they've really articulated their philosophy. They've
Hmm.
taken the time, they dive in really deep to take their story or their philosophy or their key insight and
Hmm.
really build it out for someone. And there's
Right.
tremendous value in that too, because then you have a book, you can hand it to someone. You can say, this is what I believe, this is what I think. If you want to get a consulting gig with a company, you can hand that to the HR person, or you can hand it to the CEO, and you can say, look, this is my philosophy, this is my track record, this is how I can. It's like a big old fat resume,
Yep.
that should be more entertaining than a resume, right?
Hopefully so.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Oh, that's
Good.
interesting. Cool. So, that's great. I love myth busting. I feel like,
Yeah.
you can endlessly bust myths in this world. Um, I'm just curious, what um is there anything else that you want to talk about? Anything else you want to share? Any questions you have for me? I mean, I've kind of gotten through my list of big things I want to talk about with you.
Yeah, I think I want to jump back to that I kind of glossed over just a minute ago, and that was the opportunities to go out and sell books.
Yes.
Because retail is one channel. When I'm talking with a client about direct sales, or what we used to in the traditional publishing industry, we called it special markets. It's really everything outside of retail. So, and a lot of times authors are like, they're retail. I see Barnes and Noble on the corner. I see the local mom and pop bookstore on the corner. That's where I want my book. And that's where all 100% of the focus is at, or Amazon. Um, and really, there's a huge monster world of other opportunity out there beyond that. Number one, so I tell my clients, hey, build three lists. Number one, build the top 100 podcast list. What are the podcasts that are working with and talking about your topic, or who are targeting your target audience and all of that. The second one is top 100 nonprofits doing the same thing. So if you're writing a book on adoption, for example. And what are those organizations out there that deal with adoption? And
Mm,
how do you get your book in front of the right people there so that they may go, oh my gosh, this is the best book I've ever read on this particular topic. We've got a list of 5,000 donors to our organization, and we would like to have a special edition of your book with our executive directors forward in it, and we're going to buy 5,000 units and give it to everybody that donates to us. I mean, 5,000 units? Come on. We were just talking about traditional publishers not even earning out on some of these things, and to have an independent author be able to sell 5,000 units to one organization. I mean, that those are the things that happen and can happen all the time if
yeah.
the author is looking for those things.
Yep.
I even remember an example of a for-profit company. So that would be the third list. What is the top 100 for-profit companies, maybe in your area or outside your area, that again deal with something that has to do with your topic, your expertise, they're targeting your audience, etc. I had a book a long time ago with a traditional publisher where it became so big that and people liked the message so much that there were car dealerships that bought those books and put one copy in every glove box of a car that they sold. Who could have imagined that? Who could have even thought about that as an opportunity? But again, it's just how creative can you get about getting your book in front of the right decision makers at a for-profit, a nonprofit, a civic group, whatever it might be, where they may want to use your book for something that they're doing. And how many books can you sell then? The
Hmm.
numbers are the opportunity is huge, and I think so. This is just one of those ideas where authors need to, hey, take a look at and expand on this, and how creative can you get
Hmm.
to get those books in front of the right people?
I love that. I love that, Dave. I mean, that's one thing we really advocate with people as well when we're doing, especially with their nonfiction books, when you're building a marketing campaign, is to, we kind of call it very grassrootsy, right? You just got to go
Yeah,
out after every organization, uh, every nonprofit, every group that you think could be interested, and two examples come to mind. We did a Christian book by a guy.
yeah,
Basically, he had been leading a Bible study group for 30 years,
yeah.
and he had like a little men's group at his church, and he kind of took his philosophy and he turned it into a book.
Hmm.
And what he started to do, this was actually during COVID, it was kind of interesting. He started going out after he went contacting churches and men's groups and Bible study groups all around
Yeah,
the country. He was based in Wisconsin, and he said, okay, if you're within one state and if you want to do a Bible study with my book,
yeah,
right? And that'll be your next thing that you read for the next month. If you're within one state, I'll drive to you and give a talk. If you're beyond another state, I'll call in via Zoom and
yeah,
I'll do a little thing for you. And that was a really creative way. It didn't lead, there wasn't like a big gigantic sale there, but we're talking like 20, 30, 20, 30, and they add up, right? And then you
yeah.
never know who in that group is going to talk to who else. And maybe it spreads, and then maybe eventually you connect to, a national organization where it gets spread, at a big level, right?
Yeah. Well, and sometimes the organizations don't even know that they had the opportunity exists. I mean, if you walked into, using the adoption example again, you walked into a particular adoption organization locally in your town and said, "Hey, we got this book. I'd love to partner with you on this book. I'd love to have, make a special edition of this book for you." And this can now brings it full circle back to printing, is that it's really easy to put a little call out on the cover, new cover design, put a forward or a message from an executive director or from whoever it is in the front of a book. It's really easy to recreate those special files and then get that into the printing system and print those copies,
Mm,
and drop ship them directly to whoever's buying them from you.
hmm
That's the easy part of it. So, but sometimes, the organization doesn't even know that that opportunity exists. But if you present it to them and say, "Hey, this is super easy. I'm going to give you a special discount on buying bulk books, and we'll create a special cover for you." They're like, "Oh my gosh, really? This is incredible." And so, yeah, it really opens up some opportunities for authors that are way outside of traditional retail.
Love it. That's great. Um, what else, Dave? Anything else you wanted to cover? Any other questions, thoughts, anything that you feel like we haven't talked about?
I don't think so. I think it maybe I'll leave you with this, and that is that printing can be a very important but overlooked um, area of the publishing process. I mean, everybody's concerned obviously with the content and the editing and the design and all of those types of things, the marketing. But not every printer is created equal. And we started talking about that. Print on demand is not the same thing as offset printing. Um, a softcover printer may be able to print a hardcover printer, but they may take it out the back door and go down the street and then somebody else is working on it. So working with an organization, working with and finding out if the person you're talking to actually is qualified to do the work is really, really important. There are some really, I mean, you can do all of the other things right and then have a really crappy print job and it ruins everything. And so making sure that that is part of your quality control, making sure it's an important part of your process. Don't just throw your printing out to anybody. Make sure that they can do the job right. Is I believe a real key but overlooked factor in the publishing process.
That's awesome. Amen to that, Dave. Um, so yeah, thank you for being with us today. If people want to hear about Dave's business or check him out, Indie Author Book Services is the place to go. Dave he's a partner of my company. When we do offset printing for any of our clients, we go to him to get the
Mm.
job done, and I can vouch for his professionalism and quality and honesty. So
Yeah, thank you.
thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely. My pleasure.